This is Inside the Life with Giovanni and Dutch, produced by the Mob Museum, presented by Levy Online and Levy Production Group. Giovanni Rocco and Dutch McAlpin are former police and federal task force operatives. They infiltrated drug cartels, outlaw motorcycle groups, and the mafia. Now, they share their stories. In this episode, we meet Giovanni Rocco and go deep into the making of the undercover agent who infiltrated the Real Sopranos. This is Inside the Life.
So it's humbling and it's uncomfortable, right? To start off just telling what we're not supposed to talk about, right? This is a part of what we're not supposed to talk about is our personal life. We're conditioned for 20 some odd years, you and I both.
Giovanni and I both worked in a covert undercover capacity, and we spent our lives kind of living in a secret identity, not being out in the public, kind of keeping ourselves secret, to protect our identity.
Yeah.
But what was it like for you growing up? Like, what was the neighborhood like? What was your parents like? What about school?
Oh God, it was awesome. I'm born and raised in Bayonne, New Jersey. So those who don't know it, it's outside of Hudson County, outside of Manhattan, just right near Hoboken, right near Jersey City. So it was the epicenter. Some consider the epicenter of the East Coast for the mafia. But I was third generation cop. My grandfather was a cop. My father was a cop. Brothers, uncles. So I was not supposed to be a cop. I was the black sheep of my family. And, I write about it, a lot of it in the book that I authored, just so people understand where I came from, because, you and I, we share similarities, but it's how I grew up. It's the environment I grew up in that made me the undercover that I am, right? It gave me everything I needed. The neighborhood I grew up in was, you're either going to be a cop, a longshoreman, or a gangster, right? You could be a fireman if you opted to, but most of it was law enforcement because that's my family's background. So when I grew up, I grew up working a lot of Italian restaurants as a kid, working in warehouses, trucking companies. When I was 14, 15 years old, here I was offloading and loading 50-foot containers with guys that were on parole for murder. That was my summer job when I was, I think, 16 years old. So that all added to what I was going to be. I never thought that I'd be a cop. I was a difficult kid to raise. My parents are good, hardworking people. They were both raised in low-income housing, but they quickly worked their way out, and they wanted better for their kids, and they worked really hard for what they have, and they really set an example for me.
And your dad was a cop too, right?
He was a good cop. He was known to be a good cop, known to be a fair cop, raised my brother and myself to be in his likeness, to be a tough dude, take no nonsense, stand up for yourself. He was raising men when he raised us as kids, as boys.
Now, I've known you a long time, so I know that in your early years you went through a little bit of violence. Didn't you get stabbed at like 16?
Yeah, I mean, street fighting and stuff like that I did as a kid. I mean, like all of us. In the environment I was in, yeah, not realizing what that was going to bring me in the future, but at the moment I was living in the moment. And everybody pretty much wrote me off as dead or in jail by 25. And a lot of my friends were assaulted, violently assaulted, pipes in the head, bats across the skulls, stabbings. And then one night I tried to stand up for a guy and I had gotten stabbed in the back. I took a sharp, not a knife, but like a piece of sheet metal or something. The guy stabbed me with, punched me in the back. I always got into a situation where I defended somebody else. If it was the little guy, the weaker guy, if there's 5 guys against one, I'm gonna step in and I'm gonna be that savior for that guy. I'm always gonna step in for the little guy, or the weaker one. That's what I thrived on it. Even if I got my ass handed to me, I gave it my all and I fought tooth and nail. I'll fight to the death, So that's what drove me. And I remember one time you and I talked about it, a couple times, that when I was in summer school, I had to write an essay on what I wanted to do with my life when I got older. And I still have that essay. And the essay was in 8th grade, I wrote a summer school essay on I wanted to be a police officer, why I wanted to, the reasons why, and everything that drove me to want to do it. So, and I occasionally I'll pull that out and read it. And it's funny because as a young kid, I wrote, I want to protect people. I want to stand up for the little guy, everything I just told you. So
you go through all that. How'd you become a cop? How'd you get in law enforcement?
So I graduated high school. Right at the end of high school, when I knew I was going to graduate and I was going to walk on stage, one of my buddies came to me and they gave a test for New Jersey Bell. They came in and gave like a job fair. And one of my buddies, Tony, he came to me and he's like, hey, you know, New Jersey Bell's coming in and we can take the test and we can cut out of school for the rest of the day and head over to New York. Okay, I'm in. You know, sign me up. Where are we taking the test? So New Jersey Bell came in. They gave this little workshop test, and it turns out I passed it.
What's
so
New Jersey Bell, like a phone
company? And I passed with flying colors, and they called me up in April. So imagine I graduate in June. They call me up in April, and they say, hey, you did well on the test, so we want to offer you a job as a phone installation and repair guy. So somebody was looking out for me because I had no direction. I didn't take my SATs. I had no direction. I was told I'd be dead or in jail by 25. And when you hear that enough, you start to believe it, right? I didn't invest in myself, right? And if you don't invest in yourself, then you just kind of fall to the wayside. So at that point in my life, I didn't invest in myself. I took the job as a phone repair guy. I went to school for that. I got trained up for that. I did that for about 1.5 years. And then my father called me up and he says, hey, they're giving a cop test.
So you're like driving a white van, wearing a hard hat.
Yeah. But even again, with
work
that
belt and everything.
Yeah. I was climbing telephone poles, and I had the belt, the climber's belt and the gear, and I was fixing phones, repairing phones. But again, my addiction to adrenaline, right? Just like it was as a kid and in high school and fighting and whatnot. When I found out I could work 2-man areas, believe it or not, there's sections in New Jersey that are called, they consider them to be 2-man areas. They were combat zones, like where nobody else would go at nighttime. Well, this dummy's going to volunteer. Like, hey, you're going to pay me extra money, and I can make extra money to go out at night and go in these areas where nobody goes, shootings and violent crime and in the deep ghettos, and just even the stuff I saw then. Everything that I experienced in life had prepared me for what was to come in law enforcement. So there was no shock and awe. But I didn't know what my true calling was until I became a cop, until I became a police officer and I was given that badge. It's not even about the gun and all the other materials, that badge. And when I held my hand up to take that oath, I mean, even to this day when I think about it, I get so emotional when I think about the oath and what I took and, standing there with your hand on the Bible and swearing at. That was my defining moment. Everything I realized, and again, it wasn't easy, but in a wave of emotion, I realized that was my calling. At that minute, I knew this is what I wanted to do as a cop.
Yeah, I remember being sworn in too, and it is very emotional. They got the flag in the background. You finally got this badge, and you're carrying a gun on your hip. You're wearing a uniform, and at some point though, you transition from wearing a uniform and being an overt police officer and working the streets, and then went into the undercover world.
Yeah, I kind of fell into that. I mean, I knew that was my calling from a young age. I used to watch Serpico, and I would watch undercover shows and, movies and TV shows, and always think how sexy that is and how cool it is to want to do something like that, right? To want to be what you saw in the movies, right?
Yeah.
And I thought that's what I want to do. But yeah, I was given the opportunity at a young age as a young patrolman to do some silly nonsense undercover thing, and I did it. And then that was my first taste, And then as I did it, I said, okay, I want to be a narc. I want to be a narcotics cop. I want to be a detective. The investigations are great, but I was after the thrill of the hunt.
Yeah.
Right? As a narc. I did that, and I was given the opportunity. I was given a gold shield early in my career, probably a year and a half onto the job. I was given a gold shield. I earned my way in.
A gold shield's a detective spot, right?
Shield, yeah. Detective
so you
shield.
go from a uniform, you get a gold shield, you become a detective.
Yeah. And I thought, here it is, man. They're going to make me a narc. This is awesome, right? And I'm going to be a super narc, and I'm going to be a good narc, and I'm going to be able to grow a beard and have my earrings back and all that super narc stuff they do.
And a narc, I mean, narc's a broad definition. It's a narc, once you kind of define what that is. I mean, that's
a dope cop, right? So you could work anything. Where I come from, it was narcotics you could catch a homicide as a narcotics detective.
Yeah, definitely.
You could help out in narcotics investigations, burglaries, rapes, robberies. You could investigate everything. You could help the detective bureau, the guys with the suits, right? We call them suits. So you could help the Gold Shield detectives. But I thought, this is my time to shine. I'm going to be a narc. And then they put me in Vice days. And I was like, wait a minute. What do you mean Vice days? I don't want to work Vice. Like, Vice is bookies, right? And now you go in 91, 92. You're talking all the bookies back then, right? And I'm like, wait a minute. I grew up in Bayonne. I'm from Hudson County. I'm a Hudson County kid. You want me to chase all the old guys that were the bookies and the bookmakers and the loan sharks? And I don't want to do that, But But that's what I did. I did that for about a year or so, and I chased some bookmakers, and that was great stuff. I worked a lot of stuff over in New York City back in the day when they had call centers. Like you used to call in on a Sunday when you wanted to place your bets, you call a 1-800 number. Long before this whole, online betting and sports betting. And you didn't have you had pay phones back then. So the guys used to come out with the roll of quarters. They used to sit by the pay phone. They put the quarters in all day long before you had to have your bets in before 12:30 or 1 o'clock before the game started. And, and Monday Night Football. And we used to chase the old football tickets, and they had to be in at a certain time. But a lot of the wire rooms, the 800 numbers where they called in, were based out of New York City. So all the organized crime guys had. So we would hit them on a Sunday. So we'd hit those rooms. That was fun.
You talked about being on a narc unit, and to me, being a narc unit means working a dope unit. And you talked about helping homicide and all the other investigative units. I think a lot of that probably had to do with our ability to help with surveillance, going to neighborhoods where people didn't fit in. A cop stands out. He'd wear a suit and tie and a badge and a gun. So what was your early narc days like? Dude, work dope stuff.
I worked street
level.
I worked street for a long time. I grew my beard out. I was a real skinny kid when I was first starting out. Crack was big, right? The crack pandemic through the 90s. That's when I started. That was my peak. So on the high end of the scale, Colombians and Cubans were moving all the dope, right? Pablo Escobar had just come out of his reign, and he was, he met his demise, and then I began my career right after that into early 90s. Buying dope is what I specialized in. So whether that's buying bags of heroin, buying bottles of crack, vials of crack, or whatever it was back then, and then I guess because of the work I did as an undercover, they gave me a chance to work in the DEA, and then I thrusted into the DEA task force.
While you were in your early days, did you get involved in any the motorcycle clubs or anything like that?
So let's rewind into the early 90s where you didn't have task forces, right? Task forces like you have traditionally where you didn't leave your area responsibility, right? Your AOR, as we say in law enforcement. Your area was, if you were the city of Hoboken or the city of Jersey City, that's where you stayed. You were a sworn cop in that city, so you really didn't leave those city limits. It was you really had to be something special to get outside of that area. And there was maybe a handful of cops that were working outside their areas of responsibility. So there was a guy who was infiltrating an outlaw motorcycle gang. And then they had used me to infiltrate another one. They were trying to come in through a back door with using an informant. And the informant, it was into a very popular New York area outlaw motorcycle gang back then. They were trying to infiltrate. And that was my first long term. They gave me, I would say that was probably 3 to 6 months. And I had no training back then. So it was all stuff that I knew from the street. That was crazy. So they even had control of the DMV back then. This group that I'm talking about.
What do you mean they could get like fake IDs and stuff like that?
Anytime, they were able to run you through DMV. They had connections inside the DMV, Division of Motor Vehicle. They can run license plates. They could run licenses back then, because you didn't have the internet like you do now. Everything was in-house. So all they needed was one bad egg inside. So I went over to New York. I bought my fake ID over there for $20. I went into the basement of a little place that sold some counterfeit goods and false IDs. And I bought this horrific ID from Florida with this horrible name. And, it was even crooked and cockeyed, but nobody cared back then, and that's what I used. So that was my first long-term gig.
So you did a lot of drug deals. You did some gun deals?
Yeah, I did drug deals, gun deals, murder for hires. That's how I got my feet wet, starting with that. Yeah.
Was there a lot of other undercovers working in your area?
Yeah, the task forces had a lot of undercovers. And that's who I learned from initially in the beginning, right? Guys from the street. I'm talking like serious dudes. Like the Hudson County Task Force guys had some really qualified guys who were buying serious dope off of Colombians and cartels and Cubans back then. But again, being in Hudson County, you were at the epicenter. Everybody that came over from Cuba, all the exiles and came over on the boats to Margaritos, all those guys wound up kind of migrating to Florida, and those who didn't migrate to Florida came to New York, New Jersey, and it was just a target-rich environment. You learn hard and you learn fast. So.
Now, I know at some point you kind of transitioned from doing that street-level narcotic stuff, kind of living the rough life, running with the rough guys, and you transitioned. Tell me about that.
So by that time, I had my hair, I had my beard. I was a super narc. I had probably 4 or 5 earrings in my ear, so that made me even tougher, right?
Yeah, of course.
I made a lot of bad mistakes. It was amazing. I still have all my limbs attached. Some of the mistakes that I made along the way. Malfunctions of equipment, recording devices, CIs, confidential informants going horribly wrong on us, or, giving us up to bad guys. The wire falling off of me one time when I was in the middle of a dope and a gun deal. The wire just fell off my chest from the sweat. And it was the old type of wires where they had the transmitter wire. And then they were about the size of an old VHS tape. When you wore it, it heated up.
Oh, man, they get hot.
They get really hot, right?
It'd click when they ended.
It would click when it ended, and it would make a sound. Or you wore the reel-to-reel. If the reel-to-reel you had, some places gave you a tape recorder. And the tape recorder literally stopped, and you hit a cassette stop.
Yeah.
And you had to, go to the bathroom, flip it over or something.
Yeah.
So the Nagras were like state of the art. Like that was a piece of equipment that was the Kel. What do they call them? Nagras or Kels?
Well, the Nagras were first that I remember. Then it went to the Kel, which is a transmitter and recorded.
And long before they had now. Like now everything's recorded digitally But you used to have two wires. So you'd have this big cassette tape sticking out of your pants, right? Looking like a big bulge or something. The minute somebody touched you knew what it was. But they had an antenna. It was a transmitter. So the guys over in the car parked 3 blocks away can hear you. And they had a suitcase.
Well, they could kind of hear you.
Right. So they had a suitcase with a reel-to-reel, cassette tape to cassette tape. And they make the recordings of you while it was live. And then you had the microphone.
Yep.
And it literally was this little white wire and it had this little stubby microphone at the end. And we used hospital tape and we'd stick it to our inside of our shirt or to our, and I was in the middle of this one deal and, how something catches your eye. And I look down and my whole microphone is just dangling at my side, just, and the dude is, he's armed. The one guy, it was armed. He was the bodyguard of the guy I was buying dope from. And, he just sat there and just rolled it up. Bladed your body so they didn't see it, stick it in your penny pocket, which is the small pocket of your jeans, stick it in there and hope that, and you get back to the set, right? You get back to with your guys after the deal's over and I did my thing and then you get back to the set and you, holy cow, man, did you hear that, man? Did you hear that crinkling? Did you hear what happened? And half the time, the old salty guys I worked with, they were like, we didn't have you. 2 blocks before you went in, we didn't hear anything you were saying. Because the transmitters and off the concrete buildings and the high-rise buildings, you didn't get you had to have a direct line of sight in order to listen to the transmitter. Yeah, so got into DEA. I was working DEA task forces for a number of years, and then after that, got married, had some young kids, and then that changes your dynamics in your job drastically. Because every time you go out on a case and things got hairy, you always reflected on, man, this, I don't want to leave these kids fatherless, or I don't want to leave my wife, without a spouse. Or
now I know you're being humble because I know a lot of your story, and I also know that during those times you had worked a lot of cases with a high propensity of violence.
Yeah,
you probably got robbed. You probably got ganked a few times. Ganked meaning like maybe they sold you bad dope, wasn't real, and then you have to explain that away where the money went.
Yeah.
But at some point, I know because you've told me you decided like I'm done with this, and you transitioned to like organized crime.
Yeah. I mean, God, how many times I got robbed or how many times the deal went bad. It was like 9 months on a job, I fought a guy with a butcher knife who was trying to stab a bunch of cops. Forgot that I was in full uniform. I mean, no, I had fought for my life already before I started working undercover. So anytime I was in a situation, I would always try to talk my way out of it, right? I remember the biker thing I did, the first long-term thing. An informant had set that deal up. And he set the whole deal up in his house. He says, yeah, come to my house. You could sell. My name was Mike back then. That was my undercover name, Mike. Now Mike's going to buy the dope, and he shows up with a bunch of dope, and he had different grades, different levels of dope and different purities. And he says, so I got 4 different kinds. So where do you want to start? What's your price point? And what do you want to test first? Yeah, he says, oh, you're going to test.
And by test, you mean like do it, right?
You're going to do it.
Because
I'm not selling you
cops,
dope.
you can't do dope.
Yeah, I'm not selling you dope.
Yeah.
You're not buying my dope unless you do your dope with me. And it was the informant that stepped up. The informant's wife was actually a nurse, just like that scene in Pulp Fiction. And he's like, listen, man, my wife's going to be home any minute. You guys can't be smoking dope in my house. She knows I'm in recovery. And he actually saved my ass. So the guy was like, well, if you don't do it, number one, you're going to have a problem. You're probably not going to leave here, So he was standoffish, but not in the point where he's threatening my life. He wasn't going to kill me at that moment. Yeah, I got through that. That was no problem. But then when I realized I better have a legend, I better have a story, a backstory, because the backstory I picked, remember I told you I bought that license? Murphy's Law against cops. Murphy's Law. Murphy's Law is, if it could happen, it's going to happen to us. So the guy asked me where I was from. I said, I'm not from Jersey, I'm from Florida. He asked me where. I told him the town. He lived there.
Yeah.
Right? I told him where. he knew the whole neighborhood. So here I was, I made it up because I had family that lived down there. And I made this whole story up, like, and he goes, oh, no kidding. I used to live there. Where? Where in that town did you live? Like Clearwater, Florida. Where'd you live in Clearwater? I used to live there. So you gotta be kidding me. And I was just sitting there, I don't know. It was a short time. And I made some BS story up.
Yeah.
It just helped me realize that I got to do a better job of building my legend, building my backstory, and then I started giving it some serious thought.
So what happened in your career that took you to move your undercover career toward organized crime?
I did an operation for the federal government, and they were targeting a particular drug dealer, and I had to buy off of this particular drug dealer. Now, I rolled up. They gave me a brand new Mustang, black Mustang, like New York license plates, easy pass in the window. And here I'm supposed to be like some heroin addict and, buying dope off of these guys. And as soon as I rolled down the street, you could look up the block and see all the drug dealers look at my license plate. As soon as I turned that corner, they looked at my car and they went, what the? It just didn't add up.
Yeah.
So I literally rolled up. I was like, hey, where's Spanky? I'm here to see Spanky. And they're like, nah, detective, what you're looking for is a pharmacy. If you need to buy some kind of narcotics or something, there's a pharmacy about a block down. That's where you need to go. I was like, come on, stop busting my chops. Come on, give me. And they wouldn't serve me, right? So again, hungry for the accolades from my bosses, I pushed and pushed and pushed, and they weren't going to serve me. So I realized I'm not going to get it. I drove off. I drove my Mustang away. So a lieutenant, a local police department's lieutenant, was hungry for this guy, and he had his sights set on this drug dealer. And he called it in, and he says, tell him to go back around the block. Spanky just came out of we used to call them mud huts, little buildings. So I go back around the block. I come back on the block. They're shaking their head like, what are you doing back here? And I just wouldn't take no for an answer. I got out of my car, worst thing you could ever do.
Yeah.
Come on. I begged, borrowed, and stole. Come on, let's go. Serve me this stuff. And they were like, no, get out of here. So finally I wouldn't listen. And I might have called them some unsavory names before I got back in my car. And as I got back in my car, they chased me around my car, pulled some guns out. Things went horribly wrong for me. I got put back in my car with a little help from a 9mm across my head. And then I was still vapor locked.
So hitting the head with a 9mm?
Yeah, poking, just pushing me.
Yeah.
Pushing me, bouncing off my head. But I was so stupid. All I did was vapor lock, and I had tunnel vision. I stared at the guy, Spanky. And even though this guy is screaming in my ear, and this guy's screaming in my ear, and this guy's holding and threatening to shoot me and this and that, true to form, my team didn't hear anything, so they didn't come in and save my ass. And all I did was vapor lock on this guy and be like, really, this is how you're going to do me? And I convinced him. And I gave him my story, and I gave him my legend. This is how you're going to treat me? I told you I was driving here from upstate. And this guy he never met me before.
Now he's questioning it?
Never. And he goes, man, I never met you. Yes, you did, with that blonde girl. Last 2 weeks ago, I was here, red pickup truck. And it was the informant, some girl we arrested, right? And I knew she got arrested. And I was like, listen, I was here with the girl. You don't remember the girl? Yeah, I know her. I serve her all the time, but I don't remember you being there. Man, I was here. You told me to come back. You told me to come back here and see you. And he goes, I don't remember that. But you know what? Maybe I know her. All right, just this one time. And he served me. So because of that, I go back and I look like a champ. And then I realized when I got home that night and I went to sleep, man, I'm going to get myself killed. By this time I had kids. My kids were babies. And, I was like, this is stupid. So, either I'm going to get myself killed or the executive guys, the bosses are going to get me killed for the hunger of a stat. I'm not dying for somebody's stat. So I cut my beard, cut my hair, shaved, took all my earrings out, and I came to work looking like, a federal agent.
Yeah.
Some collared golf shirt, khaki pants like the rest of them dressed, and, back then, and I look like Joe, federal agent.
Property comms detective.
And then by that next Friday, I was buying weight off of, cartels. As a polished white kid, from a business kind of guy or, somebody that had an in or an out. And then I quickly realized that, wait a minute, this is kind of better. I'm eating better. I go to better restaurants. I'm not eating dog biscuits in a double wide trailer with a bunch of bikers.
And don't you think, like, going through all that hard street level narcotic stuff, buying drugs, getting robbed, getting ganked, dealing with all those conversations, those violent personalities, do you think that made you better at now dealing with this higher echelon, these bigger dope dealers?
Yeah, it absolutely did. Negotiating for your life. And then especially after I cleaned my act up and I was able to be a quasi-businessman or a more polished guy, then I realized, you know what, man, just go back to my roots and the guy I knew as a kid. Be the person my mother and father were raising me to be. A criminal that's a gentleman, or the guys I watched fly under the radar for so many years, the OC guys.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I kind of like gravitated to that, because I grew up watching it. I grew up watching my uncles, or I grew up watching guys from my neighborhood, or I grew up watching guys in a restaurant that I worked. I was very familiar with the Genovese and the Gambinos. The top echelon of the Genovese family it was no big deal for them to run through Bayonne when I was a kid, or you come across them. And I realized how to be, I don't have to threaten you. I could just come off as those guys did.
Yeah, I think you have to kind of develop into your own personality, your own persona. It's 90% real. It's got to be a part of you. And I think you had a lot of those dynamics going on, but you went back to your roots and how you grew up as the clean-cut guy.
Being a detective, being a narcotics cop, being an investigator, you sit on surveillance, right? And we learn a lot of isms, mannerisms, the way people talk, their vernacular, their dialect, right? Different dialects, different languages, and the mannerisms of people on street corners. That's what made us good undercover narcotics. Mm-hmm. The mere fact that you're sitting there for 16 hours of binoculars staring at the same door. Yeah. If you sat at John Gotti's funeral the way we did, whoever thought, like, well, I'm in my mid-20s, you know, and so the mid-90s, and I'm watching John Gotti pull up outside and get out of a car and go pay his respect to a guy in Jersey because he went to a funeral, you know? So I'm watching these mannerisms early in my career, bumping into John Gotti. And then I'm living as a young cop, again, my Bayonne roots. I lived in Bayonne as a young cop, and I walked down a block, you know, with the girl I was dating at the time. I go down to Top Tomato, I walk in, the door's locked. Now I know it's 6 or 7 o'clock at night, that door is not supposed to be locked. I'm a Bayonne guy, I know this place is probably open until 10 o'clock. There's a reason those doors are locked. I don't know what it is, but she starts knocking on the glass door because she sees the light on in the back, and sure as anything, I'm sitting there and I look past her and I'm like, listen, it's closed, let's just go. I'm not scared, but I know obviously there's something up. And I look in the back and I look straight to the back, and big dude, man, Jumbo, you know, is a guy, his nickname in my neighborhood would be Jumbo. He's probably 400 pounds, 400 plus pounds. He comes out and gives the old, we're closed. You know, he's dressed nice, closed. You know, it looks like he could be one of the extras on The Sopranos. And with that, here comes this silhouette, and there's John Gotti himself. Closed. That's all he did. Closed. I went, let's go. We're out of here. You know, I'm not going to stand up. There's no reason for me. There's nobody getting killed, nobody getting chopped up. It's just a meeting.
Now you're working undercover with the DeCavalcante family, which is the Real Sopranos. How'd you get into that? I
got called for what we call bona fides. And bona fides is just to
make
lend,
someone else look credible.
To lend credibility to somebody, mm-hmm. Right? There was an undercover into a group of low-hanging fruit, some associates, some street guys that were loosely connected to the mob, right, in Jersey, and he was buying some significant weight of cocaine off of these kids, and he wanted bona fides of another guy and just another undercover being with him, you know, and I was that guy. What was different about this time was I'm now married to a detective, and my wife is law enforcement. And you would think that we understand each other because she had worked undercover as well. But take it or leave it, she left it, and she used to work sex crimes and as a narcotics investigator too at times. So here it is. I think it was a Sunday night, and I got a call to come help a guy out and give him some bona fides. And he says, hey, listen, I'm doing this deal down in Atlantic City. Can you take a ride down here and give me a hand with this and just, you know, chop it up with these guys for a couple minutes? They're going to bring me some product and it'll be done. And, you know, I should have known it wasn't going to be a quick 1-2 in and out. So I asked her if it was good to go. And she said, yeah, but, you know, I'm on call come midnight. So you got the kids in the morning, right? Oh, yeah, no problem. I'll be back before that. No problem at all. That's not the case. So when I showed up here, and the guys, of course, were running late, right? They're never on time. Drug dealers are never on time. Don't ever set your watch to them. So we waited and waited and waited and waited and waited. And then while we're waiting and we're sitting in a restaurant, it wasn't an act for me. I was sincerely getting pissed off because it wasn't that I was mad at the guys that were showing up with. I wasn't mad at the other undercover. I was mad at myself because I'm going to have to deal with the domestic issue when I get home because my wife is going to be chewing my ass out that I once again lied and said I'd be home on time and I wasn't. So as I sat there at the high top table watching the Yankee game and watching the Yankees lose, these guys are taking forever. We order dinner. We eat dinner. They're still not there. We're coming. I'm on the way. I had car trouble. I had this, I had that. So there was supposed to be 2 guys coming, which now multiplied into 4 guys, right? Typical. So as they enter, I'm sincerely pissed off. I got a way about me. So I don't even want anything to do. If they were sitting over here behind me, I'm just watching the Yankee game, and I'm just letting our guy do his thing. And he goes, I don't know. What do you think, G? What do you think? What I think about what? He goes, where do you want to do this? I don't know. I don't know what you're doing. And like a gangster would do. I don't know what you're doing. Whatever you're doing, I wish you'd wrap it up pretty soon because I got to get out of here. I had my dessert already. I ordered my pie a la mode. It was sitting there melting, these guys. So Ronnie goes, well, I got it on me. And I went completely gangster on him. I go, you got what? Well, I got it on me. I have it on me. It's in my, down in my pants. And I look at our buddy. I look at the other undercover. And he knows I'm playing the game. And I go, you got what? You have it on you now? You have stuff on you right here? He goes, oh, yeah, I came in with it. Like, I figured I'd just bring it in. I said, do me a favor. I don't know you. I never met you. Get out of here. Get away from me. Get away from my table, as a gangster would do. And this kid just bit. He thought I was a gangster's gangster from my mannerisms and the way I was acting. And the other undercover, he played along with it. He's like, relax, G. I know the guy. I'm vouching for him. Hey, listen, I don't care who you're vouching for. I came to have dinner with you. I don't know what he's doing here, and I don't know him. I never met him before. And I just want to go on a record, like an OC guy would say. I'm going on a record, in case you're wearing a wire, and I'm going, I don't know him. I never met him. So leave me alone. And he goes, it's okay, G. Relax. We're going to do it here. So I play into it. And finally he goes, well, we can sort of target the kid with the dope. He goes, well, we can go to the bathroom. So again, I go to Giovanni Gatto, 10.0, and I turn around and I said, you know what? You're something else, man. You're a high school drug dealer, huh? And you and I are going to have a conversation. I'm pointing at the other undercover. You and I are going to have a conversation later about the mess you just put me in. If I'm going back to jail, this was something I did. Let's just make it a point. And these little crumbs I'm putting out, right? And again, these are all things I learned in my neighborhood along the way. The guys how they acted. And here comes this little Italian waitress walking by. And I would never, ever talk to anybody in my own family, let alone anybody else in public. Hey, sweetheart, hey, come here. And she comes over, looks like she could be related to one of my cousins, and looks at me with this snarl.
Oh, yeah.
I said, you got one of them things? You got one of them bags to put like the food in when you're going? She goes, and I know. And she goes, a to-go bag? I said, yeah, one of them. Go get me one of them, will you? And I could see in her face, and I'm seething. Like, I sound like a complete scumbag talking to this girl like this. I'm the guy I would smack in the mouth. So, but again, for the role, I'm turning it up. And he's watching this whole thing unfold. So she comes back with the bag, throws it at me, and I'm like, I'm sorry, sweetie, I'm sorry. I'm in a rush. She goes, whatever, just don't worry about it. And I wink at her, and she like gives me a smile, so I know I'm in good graces. And I turn to him, and with a scowl, and I said, just give it to me under the table. And I take it, I put it under the bag, up, I leave, I walk out, I go give it to the case agents outside, and I'm mumbling under my breath the whole time like a sociopath, like the guys I saw all growing up. And he just bit. He created this whole persona about me. And
the guy that you were buying dope from.
Yeah, the guy that Undercover was buying dope from. So he went back to the neighborhood and went back home to North Jersey, and it wound up he was a kid from Elizabeth, New Jersey, which is where the DeCavalcantes are based out of, in the New Jersey faction. And he made up this whole crazy story, how he went down to Atlantic City and he met these 2 guys, and they were with the Bruno Scarfo's crime family, which is the Bruno Scarfo, the Philly crime family. And he made up this whole legend, this kid. He's got a criminal history. We're just going to seal him up nice and tight, and we'll be done with it in no time, and we'll get him to that threshold, that federal threshold, and the case will be done. Not knowing that he was related to one of the guys who was a main guy inside the DeCavalcantes. So as time went on, people started to wonder. So the case went on where he was a street kid. he didn't have the intelligence and the means to be like a polished criminal, right? He's a street kid. He's a hustler. So I started trading him a lot of my counterfeit goods for the dope, right? Mm-hmm. And then eventually he took a shot at me. When I said not a physical shot, he didn't shoot a gun at me. He took a shot at me in the street. So what that means is I'm going to test you, right? I'm going to see if you really are who you say you are, right? And a lot of guys do that by beating you. They'll give you, you'll order like a very good quality. Your sample of dope can be a really high quality dope. And then when I bring you whatever product at the end of the day, it's garbage, right? It's a lower quantity. Its purity is junk. You know, it's crap. And again, cut, for anybody that doesn't know what cut is, that's the mixing agent, whether it's baby laxative you mix with pure cocaine or whatever it is. So a lot of times they'll put more cut in it just to get the weight, and they'll take a shot at you.
Yep.
So he did. He took a shot at me, and he gave me really good product, and then it just dropped off to like nothing. And then what happened was the lab came back as it didn't even have CDS in it, controlled dangerous substance. It had no cocaine at all. It was all cut. Yeah. So he was just a hustler. So that's when I called him up and introduced the thought of Dutch, right? So I nonchalantly called him up, not in a threatening way. I said, you got to be out of your effing mind. Are you crazy? Like, did you knowingly do this to me? And he acted so concerned. What happened, G? What's the matter? I said, the stuff you gave me was complete garbage. Now listen, I'm not going to hurt you. But the guys I brought it to are serious guys. They're not like us. These guys are outlaws. And I gave it to these guys. And one of them I'm kind of related to, not blood, but, it's like family to me. And when I give this to them, and they're going to come back to me, they're not going to come after me. They're not going to come looking for me. They're going to come looking for the guy who sold it to me, because that person took a shot at me. And the way I explained it, he turned white, turned 3 shades of white. No, I'll make it right. So in the street, I got credibility for it. And my bona fides went through the roof with this guy now, because I actually brought that stuff back to him. And I said to him, listen, I'm bringing it back to you tonight. No, just flush it down the toilet. There's no need to. No, for evidence purposes, I'm going to bring it back to you. So I brought it back to him one night at the Ribera Club. And that's the DeCavalcante social club. Uh-huh. And the Ribera Club is on a dead-end street in Elizabeth, New Jersey. You go down the dead end, there's a parking lot off to the right, and a big Ribera Club on the side. It's been a stronghold for years. You can't get in and out of there. Even for surveillances, you couldn't do surveillances on it. So here I was now going from a investigator to driving onto this street, going down to the Ribera Club, And you have to understand, I knew from growing up in Bayonne, and I knew from being around OC guys, if any product at all came within a certain distance of that club, and those guys knew about it, they could just kill me and kill this guy that I was dealing with, because they don't want that stuff around, right? They can go that extreme. They might not, but they could. So I was a little nervous going in, and I threw it back in his face. I put it in the car, and, again, just like a video game, my life points went through the roof, and he just thought I was a serious guy. And from those stories, he just started bragging about me, started selling my Timberland boots and the products that I had in the street. And then the OC guys, the legitimate guys connected to the Cavalcantes, they came knocking, and they said, where are you getting all this stuff? What are you doing here, man? Like, how are you making all this money? And he says, I'm with this guy now. And then I got called to the table. And which means I got called for. He had to bring me to a guy, and they wanted to meet me, and they brought me to one guy. He vetted me out, and then I met a guy, Luigi Oliveri is another guy I met, and this guy Jimmy was the kid I was working with, the kid that showed up at the restaurant and took the shot at me, and then eventually he introduced me to his immediate supervisor, call him, right? The guy inside the family who he reported to. And Luigi was a low-hanging fruit. He was an associate for years. He grew up in the life, Cosa Nostra. But he wasn't a made guy by any means. He was just an associate. But Jimmy answered to Luigi. So Luigi asked to meet me, and then we set up a meeting. I met him. Louis was a little more polished than Jimmy was. He didn't like me right out of the gate, man. I remember getting out of my Mercedes. I drove a Mercedes SUV, and I met him outside of a mall in New Jersey. And when I got out and I walked up to him, he just looked right up and down me and laughed, giggled. From my shoes to my jeans, to my pressed jeans, to my button-down shirt. And he snickered at me. It was almost like, what's so funny? He's like, nothing. Where you from? And he just started peppering me with questions, wanting to know my background, wanting to know where my family was from in Italy, wanting to know my whole legend, you know. But again, you know, it was a little bit of a sniff test for me and him. And then he liked everything he heard. And I told him I had cigarettes and I had all these things. And I didn't just vomit all over him everything, how I get it and what I got. I just gave him little snippets.
Yep.
And eventually he asked, "Oh, you got cigarettes?" Yeah. Well, how come you're not selling to Jimmy? Would you sell them to Jimmy if you had cigarettes? You know, almost like degrading, right?
Yeah.
But because I said stuff like that, he's like, "Okay, so let me buy some of them cigarettes." So I gave them to him at a fair price, and cigarettes move in the street. So that went well. And then I started dealing with Luigi a little more, and he was good. He was always on time, nothing like Jimmy. He was always on time. His money was always straight. He was always in and out, boom, boom. And, you know, we were making good money. He was making good money in the street, so it was a good relationship we were building. Jimmy got a little bit jealous, right, because I was doing work with Luigi.
Yeah.
So he wanted to win me back.
He kind of got cut out.
Yeah, and he was kind of mad. He owed me some money in the street, Jimmy did. You know, and this whole dynamic went down between Jimmy and me because I gave him some stuff on consignment, and then he was supposed to pay me back.
Kind of fronted it to him.
I did. You know, and again, we decided as case agents, not just as an undercover, to do that. You know, just to get ourselves a little more into the case. And at that time, it still wasn't a Cosa Nostra case. It wasn't an Italian organized crime case. It was just a drug case still. And then Jimmy tried winning me over, and it wasn't working. So Jimmy trumped Louis. And he did that by meeting me in a mall one day and had a walk and talk with me. And we were doing a walk and talk in the mall. And he goes,
You and Jimmy?
Me and Jimmy. And he goes, "You know, I know you're doing some stuff with Louis, but you should really stick with me and selling stuff in the street. Because my uncle's Charlie Stango. Do you know what Charlie Stango is?" "I have no idea what Charlie Stango is. I never heard of your uncle." "Well, my uncle he just got out of prison, you know, for doing murder and this and that. He's on parole, and, you know, and he can tell us, he can call shots, and he could sponsor us in the street, and we could sell a lot of stuff in the neighborhood where Louis is." And he's trying to trump Louis. I knew exactly what he was doing. Yeah. But again, you're pitting each other against, you know, them against each other. So I let it bite, and I was like, "Yeah, well, so what does that do for us?" He says, "Well, if I ask to get a meeting with my uncle, maybe my uncle will sponsor us and we'll be allowed to sell this stuff in the street." Listen, Jimmy, I'm all up for making money. So however we can make money, you know, all I want to do is sell my product. I don't care who's buying it. You know, as long as I'm getting my number, I'm good. So fast forward, he decides that he wants to introduce me to his uncle. His uncle had some guys from the Gambinos vet us out first. So he didn't just say, "Yeah, set a meeting up. Let me meet this kid." You know, here's a guy who, and again, from our investigative purposes, we knew he was paroled. We knew he had just gotten out for a murder stint. He just served all of his time. And he was on what we call paper, right? We refer to being on parole as being on paper. So he was on paper. He was very cautious. So what he did was he used an associate he had in the Gambino crime family. And he sent that guy to lunch to vet me out. And he says, "Go check this guy Giovanni out. Go with my nephew, see what my nephew's doing with this guy. I don't know."
Charlie sent this guy to have lunch with you?
Mm-hmm. And he did. And then he just peppered me. He peppered me, sat me down, asked me questions. He wanted to know who I was, you know, what blood type my mother was. You know what I mean? Just crazy. He just wanted to know everything about me. But again, without being too standoffish, I kind of stood my ground, told him what I was doing, making money. As long as I'm making money, well, where you from? You know, it doesn't matter where I'm from, you know? And I made him work for it, but I gave it to him. So he kind of liked what he heard, and he went back and reported back. I guess, I'm assuming he reports back to Charlie and says, "Yeah, listen, guy's polished. He's nothing like your nephew. You know, he's more like, dresses like me and you. You know, he kind of like an old school guy." So I guess Charlie liked what he heard. Next thing you know, Charlie calls up and he tells his nephew, "I want to see you. So bring your friend." And we all had one big happy lunch. It was breakfast. It was breakfast at the Union Plaza Diner in Union, New Jersey, right on 1 and 9. It's right in the Middle Island. It's an old school gangster place. I did plenty of surveillance there. I knew, you know, guys that I arrested as a investigator, task force guy, you know, DEA, FBI, guys I arrested in that place, go to lunch there. And now here I was, like, walking in like as an undercover and go, "Holy cow, man, I hope nobody recognizes me. This is way too close to home." You know, right out of the gate, I knew I was way too close to home.
Yeah.
Never knowing it was going to go as deep as it went. So I showed up for the breakfast, and there's Charlie. I walk in, and man, here I was all these years as an investigator and undercover, and all of a sudden, like, man, I had so much cortisol going through my body and just my brain, where your ears get numb and you get that tunnel vision. I hadn't had that feeling for years, and I had it. Like walking into this diner, and here he was, and I could lock in on this guy. And I guess, you're building him up, and I've been around murders before, I've chased murders, but this guy was something different, So as I walk in, he kind of gave a half-ass stand. Yeah, here he is, talking about his nephew. And then he just couldn't say my name enough times. Oh, is this Giovanni Gatto? What's that? Gatto? All right, Giovanni Gatto, come and have a seat. And he made me sit down next to him. And I just watched him. He did this whole thing where he says, Goom's here, the Gambino guy. He referred to everybody lovingly as Goom. Somebody you respect, you would call him Goom.
Okay, yeah.
Like Goomba Dutch or Goomba, Goomba Johnny, Goomba this, Goomba that. Yeah, I'm going to let you do what you're doing, but I'm going to let you do it with Gooms. He's going to do this with you, and he's going to watch over. And if you're doing what you're saying you're doing, and everything is right, then maybe I'll let you do some stuff in the neighborhood and, sanction it. And then he says, and if you fuck this up, he's going to do whatever he wants to you. You understand? Nephew or no nephew, he's going to do whatever he feels he wants to do to you, and I'm going to let him do it. All right? And I'm like, okay. And I'm just sitting there quiet as a church mouse, and he looks over and he says, same goes for you. Do you understand me, Junior? And he looks at his nephew, and he says, yeah. He goes, no, you don't. And he just degrades this kid. And he goes, you're a moron. You don't understand anything I say. But that said, let's see what happens. Me, I'm on parole. I'm moving to Nevada. Matter of fact, I got to go catch a plane. That's why I'm dressed the way I'm dressed. Don't screw this up. And we'll see where it goes from there, right? And then he proceeds to order his meal. And he says, I don't know what I'm going to get to eat. What are you eating, Gomes? So he says, well, they're corned beef sandwiches. They're famous for their corned beef sandwiches here. I haven't had a corned beef sandwich in years. I've been locked up for 20 years or whatever it was, 14 years. Yeah. Bring me the corned beef sandwich. I'll try that. So as we're talking, he's asking me about my background. Now it's just small talk, and the waitress comes over and she gives him his corned beef sandwich. He goes, oh, it smells good. And as we're talking, and imagine it's noon, 12:30 in the afternoon. A lot of older folks are there, right, for lunch specials or whatever it is, the early bird specials. And so there's a lot of seniors in this diner and working people, working class people for lunch. And then he sits there and takes one bite into the sandwich and he just starts screaming, like what the, and takes this big mouthful of chewed up fatty meat and bread and just spats it back onto his plate, like just, what is this shit? Like just, what is this garbage? This is garbage. It's garbage. And he starts making like a scene. And I'm sitting there like, okay, again, I have been in this situation, whether it was with my own family or somebody from the neighborhood. I was comfortable in this situation where somebody does this, makes a scene. So it wasn't shock and awe to me. I'm just sitting there, and the Goom says, what's the matter? It's no good? It's all fat. It's all garbage. And he's literally pulling it out of his mouth, throwing it back on a plate. And the lady comes over, the waitress, and she's like, was it no good? He goes, no, it's trash. Get it out of here. Just get out of my face. And you could see this guy was like a hair trigger, because she's like, well, do you want me to get you something? No, I just want you to get it out of here. Get it out of my face. Just get it out of here. Get it. And he's like making a scene. And you saw how short fused this guy was. And I was like, okay. So right after that, he's like, all right, well, I'm going to leave. So don't fuck this up. You let me know how they're doing. And you, Mr. Gatto, we'll see what happens with you. And he just got up, and that was it. He left. So that progressed into months of just, phone calls, and he watched us from afar and checked on us with those other guys. And I did business with Louis for a while, and I did business with Jimmy. And then eventually Jimmy came to me and said, listen, my uncle's happy with what's going on. Go buy a burner phone, or I'll give you a phone to call him. And I called him on a burner phone, and that's how we started a relationship from afar.
So you're working, this is all in Jersey. In New Jersey, right?
Jersey, and yeah.
And then did you have to travel to New York, back and forth between New York and Jersey?
After I met Charlie, I started doing a lot of traveling back and forth to New Jersey. So they knew that I was a recent guy that came home from Florida. I relocated back to like South Jersey, Philly area. They knew I was living down there at the time. That's why I showed up for dinner down in Atlantic City, because I just happened to be from that area. And then they knew that I had some loose connections, and I was transitioning back up to New York. Right, with my girl. I had a girlfriend who was living in New York, and we were both kind of transitioning up there. So that was the legend. That was the story. And then eventually the relationship just grew and grew and grew and grew and grew, over a couple of years. That just, after I ingratiated my way into him, he just, it's a long story, but it took a life of its own.
So while you're doing all these deals, they're happening. Now you're heavily involved with these mafia guys. Mm-hmm. Did you have like surveillance teams following you and different?
Yeah, in the beginning we had
support
a lot of
personnel.
Yeah, we had support. And again, I was doing this case, but I was doing other cases too. I had other major cases going on, which I had cases on the West Coast. I was supporting other operatives in their cases. I was doing some foreign counterintelligence cases I was supporting or working alongside of. I think at the time I was doing this, I was infiltrating the Black Panthers as well. So I had all these other jobs going, all these other cases going at the same time while this one was going on. But this was my primary. It took every second of my day, for a while, because it wasn't just running around eating and doing deals all day. This guy, he had me on the phone all the time. It was as if your family member was calling you, your wife was calling you.
Charlie?
All day long, yeah. Yeah, and he was on West Coast time, I'm on East Coast time, and it would just be checking in. Then he'd be like, wow, you're all over the place. You're in Atlantic City all the way back up to New York to Atlantic City. You got to find yourself someplace in the middle. He found me in Central Jersey. He found me an office, and that put me in the middle. And then he taught me, use that as your home base. Let people come to you.
So he got you set up with an office.
He got me set up in an office.
And I know a little bit because you've told me so many stories and we've got to know each other so well. But at one point, weren't you almost burned like by a surveillance team? The black pickup.
Oh no, the black pickup was me. That was me. Just I completely turned off. That was my fault. So I was in a car. I was in another car, not my undercover car. I was in a different car, and I picked up my son, mm-hmm. and I had to commute through Staten Island. So I had to cut through Jersey and go through Staten Island, and and I was in traffic. I was in bumper to bumper traffic one day, and my burner phone starts ringing, and it's Jimmy. And, I'm driving along.
Jimmy's the guy who originally brought you into the whole deal.
Yeah. He's the kid, that Charlie's nephew. By then I was distancing myself. The more I started doing business with Charlie, and Charlie had me running around at higher levels, I kind of left Jimmy in the dust a little bit because that's the way the investigators wanted it. But then I was still dealing with Luigi too, so I had the two of them. So he calls me up one day and my phone's blowing up, and, I got the baby seat in the back, and, he's crapping out on the traffic on the way home like babies do in the car seats, and the phone's ringing. I said, let me see what he wants. Hey, what's up? Cuz, where are you right now, cuz? So, what? Who is this? It's Jimmy. Where are you right now? Where are you? Where are you right now? I'm like, I'm running around. What do you want? Are you in Jersey right now? What are you talking about? Are you in a black pickup truck on the Gatos Bridge? I swear to God, there's a guy who's driving a black pickup truck, looks just like you on the Gatos Bridge. He says, you sitting in traffic on the Gatos Bridge? What are you talking about? Now, again, try not to turn your head, right?
Right.
Try not to, and your heart's racing, and here comes the cortisol and the rush of adrenaline because
and you
you're in a black pickup. You know you're on the Gatos Bridge, heading from Jersey into Staten Island, and you got nowhere to go. It's a 2-lane bridge. The Gatos Bridge is a 2-lane bridge with no shoulder. So even if I wanted to pull off on a shoulder and blow people off or, jump around people, I got nowhere to go. And it's rush hour, probably 5:30, 5:45 at night. Rush hour, New York traffic, Jersey traffic. Now he's trying to catch up to me. And he goes, I got to catch up to you because if I catch up to you, I'm going to take a picture of this guy. He's just spitting image of you. I thought it was you in a black pickup. I got to go. I'm in the middle of doing something, Jim. I don't have time for this. And as I'm looking, I could see, and I knew he drove that little silver car he had, and I could see it trying to catch up to me in my side view mirror. And I was like, oh. So as I'm trying to drive through traffic and navigate it, and I'm trying to speed up a little bit, and thank God, again, man plans, God laughs, I couldn't get this traffic to move, but then all of a sudden I got down towards the plaza and the toll plaza and everything kind of fanned out, and I was able to, and I was just like, call you later. And he called me later. He said, I couldn't catch up to the car. He told me later on. So that was just one of many incidents. And again, I was a single guy with no kids in that case. And that could have went horribly wrong. So Luigi called me up one time and he was trying to get a hold of me. So he was trying for the longest time to get a hold of me through another associate I had. And that associate calls me up and says, hey, this guy's trying to get a meeting with you. This guy, Louis, keeps calling me. What do you want me to do? well, set a meeting up tomorrow. And I wasn't sure what the meeting was about. It was kind of his pitch to me. I should be in his crew. That's really what he was getting at. He was trying to, so in order, in his crew being, he wanted me to report to him, right? But I seemed to be a good earner with the cigarettes and the swag that I had. The swag is all the stolen or counterfeit goods that we had off the back of the trucks. The boots and the shoes and the watches and the wallets or whatever they were we had. So he was making good money. So I get there, we have the meeting, and after the meeting, he wants to win me over. So he basically says to me, listen, all that stuff you've been doing, not the stuff you're doing with me, but the other stuff. You understand? I said, no, I don't understand. What are you saying? And I made him, I made
He's
him
trying to let you
right.
know that he knows
Right.
what you're doing.
And he's like, well, the stuff that you're doing, like what you're doing with Jimmy's friends, the powder stuff. Yeah. How do you know about that? Well, they're my guys. They're with me. Oh, really? They're your guys? Yeah. Okay. So you're going to give me a better price now? And again, everything's money in the street, right? So there's the different wheels spinning and all these different things going in your head and all these different, and my thinking, is he taking a shot at me? You know, and again, all this adrenaline and cortisol running through, right? Oh, wow, this is a great conversation, but I got to spin it now and I have to control it. So I go, okay, so that means when renegotiating per gram, I'm going to get it cheaper now, right? Or I'm at least going to get a better quality stuff. So he goes, well, that's what I'm saying. This is why you should be with me. Now, as we're having this great conversation, my associate, the guy that drove to this meeting with me, he realizes, you know what, this is a very intimate conversation. I should excuse myself from it. Rightfully so. So he did that. And he went and sat in the car. So the associate goes in, sits down, and I guess got bored. So he decides that he would contact the case agent just to let him know how this meeting was going and that we were almost finished. So-and-so's with the target, so-and-so's. He used whatever terminology he used and sent it to the case agent's burner phone, because he had a burner phone also. Problem was, who set the meeting up? And who did he last text? He texted Luigi. So he didn't send that to the case agent. He thought he was texting the case agent, and he accidentally sent it to Luigi while I was speaking with him. So he jumped out of the car, looks at Luigi, looks at me, and just focuses on Luigi and says, give me your phone. Just give me your phone. Now, I don't know anything about this. I'm looking, I'm like, dude, what are you, you know, like, what are you doing? And Luigi's looking at him like, what? So he gives him the phone, and he takes the phone, and the text comes over. It was that fast.
Man,
he jumped
caught
out
it
of the car.
just in time, didn't he?
Caught it just in time. And the text came over, and he just goes, fuck. And he runs away with the phone. So I'm like, where's this guy going? So Luigi's wondering where he's going. So as I'm sitting there processing this, I'm like, where? So he walked away about 60, 70 yards, and he walked to a strip mall, the end of the mall, at the end of the strip mall we were at, and he's pacing back and forth, and eventually goes inside a Verizon store. So Louie's looking at him, and he's pointing at him, following him with his finger. And he goes, where's this guy going with my phone, Giovanni? I don't know. Well, what's he doing? Where's he going with my phone? Where's he going to the Verizon store? I don't know, Lou. Let's go find out. I don't know what his problem is. Let's go find out. So we walk over together. And just as we're coming up on the store, he comes out of the Verizon store, hands Louis his phone. He says, I got to go. I got to leave right now. I just had an accident at home. I got to get home right now. I got to go. So I'm like, all right, well, I got to go. I'll talk to you later. I don't know what's up. Let me give you a shout later. I jump in my car with the guy, and I'm driving away, and I go, what happened? Did something happen at home? Did something really happen at home? Nah. Listen, man, I effed up. You effed up? What do you mean you effed up? I screwed up. You know, I sent a message, and he confesses the whole thing. Full disclosure is he had a Samsung Android phone, the associate. The text that came through on Louis' phone was an iPhone, I think. And he wasn't familiar on how to delete the iPhones because it was so new at the time. Yep. So he actually thought on his feet, and he ran into the Verizon store and actually told the girl, erase this right now, erase this. And he did. Problem was, there's no phone calls made. There's no text sent. You know, there's nothing there on the phone that shows. So I said to him, like, that's going to be an issue.
So it looks odd that he took off his phone and didn't use it for anything?
You made a call on it? What are you going to tell me? You made a call and I deleted the call? Who does that? Nobody does that. He's like, yeah, don't worry about that guy. I don't care. No, I have to care. This is a bad thing for me. This is going to come back and bite me. So it didn't for the longest time. And eventually it did come back and bite me. Unbeknownst to me, that same day, we had surveillance covering me. And there was a female and she was followed back by Louis and his crew, and they followed her all the way back to the FBI building.
So he had counter surveillance watching you and your surveillance team.
He did, yeah. He had counter surveillance on us. But I didn't know that. I didn't know that for months. And then what happened was he didn't win me over. Louis didn't. And towards the end of the case, Charlie won me, right? I was running a crew for Charlie. Everything happened the way it happened in the DeCavalcante's family. There was a divide in the family, right? There was a war brewing between the upper echelons because the boss of the family was at the time John Riggy, longtime boss. He was aging out. He was in his 90s. I think he was pretty much on his years. He was going to pass away eventually. So before he passed, he stepped down, passed the torch. They weren't sure who the torch was going to go to. So there was a divide in the family. All this stuff happened when I was in. But the problem was Louis always sat on this issue and he didn't let it go. So he held that against me. The Bureau never even told me that they got followed back. She knew she was followed back that day, but they slipped up and didn't tell me, right? So by not telling me, I guess it was kind of a good thing because I didn't have it in the back of my head. So all of this stuff was stewing on Louis all this time. They fought over me. And then it actually caused a sit down. Like when a family has a sit down or they go to a meeting and call a sit down. So Louis had to come into the administration, to the bosses. He had to pitch his case why he wanted Giovanni and his crew as he was starting to build a crew. And then Charlie had gotten made captain. So he was a captain now. He far outranks Louis. Louis is just an associate. So Charlie won that with no problem. Hands down, he won that. Plus his notoriety in Cosa Nostra and different families across the country and internationally, Charlie's a known guy. So of course Charlie won. They're never going to go against the captain. So that day, it was a terrible day because Louis called me out on it. And he basically, I go to the meeting, I go to this little meet and greet with all the bosses. Part of it is a deli and part of it is a butcher shop. So we would go there for meetings. I've been there with Charlie before in the past. That particular day is the day that Charlie was all dressed up. The bosses showed up from the family, the crime family, and they were there to meet me and see Charlie, and he was going to make it known. So as I came around the corner, it looked like you were driving onto the set of a Sopranos episode. They're all out there to the nines, waiting for me, and I do this good thing, and Charlie introduces me. I go inside, and I shake the hands of the bosses and the street boss and the underboss. And Charlie basically says, this is my kid, and this is Giovanni. He speaks for me now. He's going to send messages through me and through other parts of our family and with other families. And that was great. I had some great conversation with those guys. The underboss even gives me his personal cell number, the street boss, and says, basically, if you need anything, just call me direct. You can get a hold of me anytime. Great meeting. I left that feeling like a champ. Problem was, when we left, Charlie wanted to go around the neighborhood and drive around and do a little promotion of himself and do a little reliving of the neighborhood. So as we're driving around, he's go here, turn here, turn here, turn there. And he tells me to turn down a dead-end street. So as we turn down this dead-end street, he says, all right, now turn the car around. Turn the car around. And we're heading back out through the dead end. So I park right here. So he parks me on this dead-end street facing out. I'll be right back. And takes a walk. Disappears for like 15 minutes. So now I'm doing the math, and I go, and I hear these dogs. These dogs are barking, going nuts, right next to the building where I'm at, and they're in the basement. And it clicks to me, holy cow. He brought me to Louis' house. He brought me right to Luigi's house. So he's like doing some kind of power move right now. And I knew it was Louis' house because everything clicked because of the stories where they used to use the dogs to make collections with people in the street. If you owed money to these guys and you didn't pay up, they'd bring you down this basement and throw you in this room with these pit bulls. And they would just, until they'd use it to threaten you.
Yeah.
As I'm waiting, Charlie don't come back. Luigi comes back. Or shows up, doesn't come back. He shows up. And he emerges from the street. And he looks down the block and he goes, come here. And I roll the window down. I'm like, what's up? I'm like, from like maybe 25, 30 yards away. What's up? He goes, come here. Come out here. I will bump up my door. I'm like, I'm not a fool. I'm not walking into a trap. I'm like, where's Charlie? He says, don't worry about it. Now all of my thoughts are, oh,
you heard the dogs barking
man.
and
He's
everything.
just pissed all over this guy's Cheerios. I hear the dogs barking. Charlie didn't come back. There were rumors that Louis had gotten made. He did it facetiously, some of them said, and there were these rumors going around. did he just clip Charlie and now he's going to send a message and clip me to let these guys know, you know, because there's divide in the family, all this crazy stuff was going on. So all these things are going through my head. And so finally I said, you know what, let me go see what he wants. I walk up to him. You know, I ingratiate him and I go 2 kisses on the cheek for a made guy. And I said, hey, I hear good things. I hear, you know, congratulations on all, you got your button, you know, meaning you became a made guy. And he was just like a pompous, like, you know, like a peacock, you know. And he says, yeah, take a walk with me. So I knew there was rumors that he always carried a 38 in his pocket, and he had his little coat, his overcoat. And he wouldn't take his hands out of his pocket. And he got himself so worked up, and he revisited the whole thing with the associate of mine with the phone, taking the phone. He revisited that whole thing. And he says, I don't like what your guy did. What he did was a bad thing. And you know what? He never even used my phone that day. So I kind of talked my way out of that. And I had some answers for him, and I mitigated that pretty well. And then he turns around and he goes, and, you know, and the other thing, when I left that day, and he comes out with this whole story about following a girl back to the FBI building. And he says, you know, they said that car's been here the whole time that the meeting happened. I think they're cops. And then they drove out. And he says, and we followed her. And guess where we followed her to? I said, I don't know. Guess. Go ahead, Giovanni. Guess where we followed her to? I don't know. FBI building. How do you react to that? Ticks and tells in our world are everything.
Yeah.
So you want to talk about emotional intelligence. So I don't understand what you're saying. I said, we followed her to the FBI building. What do you got to say for yourself? Like, because one of 2 things. Either you're a rat and you're wearing a wire. What? And I open my jacket. I go to show up my jacket. Or, and he saw me walking towards him.
Yeah.
So he kind of like cowed down. He goes, or hear me out. Or you got heat and you brought the heat to me. So he's trying to pivot real fast, right? He's trying to pivot on his own words. So you have to understand, in this dynamic, if it was me and you and we were in the street and you said that to me, I might go a little overboard and smack you in your mouth, right? For bona fides. I can't assault you because I'm a police officer, but I can maybe do something to mitigate it. This is different because I can't touch this guy. This guy is a made guy. If I put my hands on him, shove him, touch him, grab him, poke at him, he could ask to have me whacked. He can go right to Charlie and say, I don't like what he did. He put his hands on me. I'm a made guy in this family. I'm a recognized guy in this family. I don't like him. I want him whacked out. And Charlie would have no, if the votes went against Charlie, he could speak up for me all he wants, and he could come up with an excuse, and he could try to vouch for me and get me out of it. But if the administration said, no, Charlie, I understand he's your kid, but Giovanni got to go, Charlie might be the one to have to whack me.
Yeah.
You know? So there's so much of this, like, going on inside your head at that very moment. Meanwhile, he's got his keys in his pocket. He's rattling the keys. He's not taking his hands out of the other one. And everybody always said he carried a 38 on him. So all this stuff is going through your head. And then as I'm staring past him, I see his guys that I've been buying dope from. They all start showing up because they all live in the neighborhood. They all live close by. So now they're showing up in cars. He made calls. Once he found out Charlie was in the neighborhood with me, he started calling guys out of the woodwork. So I was like, and Charlie's nowhere to be found. So now I'm really spinning. And then here comes crazy Charlie. He comes beep-bopping down the street. Oh, hey. People beeping at him. Hey, he's waving everybody because he's back from prison and saying his hellos. And now he just, you know, he goes up one side of me, down the other in front of Charlie. So I look at it as, I think Louis went to Charlie, and I'm thinking he told him about this. He told him about the phone call. He told him about following the girl back to the FBI building. So maybe Charlie served me up to him to see how I react to this. Maybe Charlie's vetting me out.
Well, he had to send him out there to talk to you, didn't he?
He did. He had to send. Yeah, he served me up either way. So now I'm thinking, well, do you tell Charlie? You know? So the meeting ends okay. I mitigate it. And basically what happened was money's everything, right? So I mitigated by money. And I said, look, man, I don't know why you and I got off on the wrong foot. I understand you didn't want me to be with him, but, you know, I got to be with this guy. Like, this is where my bread and butter is. Like, you know, I could still do business with you, Lou. I don't know why we're not doing business together. So I kind of like threw myself at the mercy of him a little bit and gave it to him. And I went, look, my friend Tommy that did the thing with the phone, he's nothing like me and you. He's never done nothing bad. Right? Like, when we say that in my world, it means he's never shot anybody, he's never killed anybody or clipped anybody. He's never done nothing bad. You understand? He's never put serious work in. He's not like me and you. And now I know, see, the cop's brain on this side of my brain knows Louis never been arrested. So I just watch, and I watch for the shoulders to drop. And as soon as I got the shoulders dropped, I know I got him. Like psychologically, I got him. So I go, look, man, I don't know where we went wrong, but let's just get back to doing business together. You know, let's just get back to making money. You and I were good at it, almost like a romance, like a high school romance. We were good together once. Let's get back to that. And he goes, yeah. You know, well, listen, I'm okay with doing that. You know, you got any menthol cigarettes? You got any Newports? Nah, I don't have any Newports. No, they're like gold in the street. Nobody's got them. What do you got? I got maybe Parliaments and a couple of Marlboro Lights. And everybody wants Marlboros and Newports, right? And I could have got right back in his good graces and said, yeah, I got all Reds, I got all Parliament, I got all Marlboros. But I gave him shitty cigarettes. I was like, nah, right now I got Parliaments and I got Marlboro Lights. You want them? That's all I got right now. And at the time, he was getting them at $1,800 a case. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
So he goes, all right, I'll take some of the Marlboro Lights. Same price? Nah, price went up. And you hear him laugh. And I still listen to this tape to this day, and I listen to it and I chuckle because he laughs. And he goes, I bet they did. Because what I did was I taxed him, right? You just accused me. Yeah, you just accused me of being no good.
Right.
And I'm doing this for a reason. And this is the undercover brain going. Because who's watching this whole show? Charlie. Charlie's standing right here watching this, watching his kid negotiate with this guy who's accusing me of being bad, accusing me of being no good. And I said, nah, price went up. I bet it did. How much? It's $2,200 a case now, so take it or leave it. He knew I taxed him.
Right.
You know, he knew I was taxing him, so he goes, all right, I'll take 2 cases. When, tomorrow? Yeah, I'll give you a call tomorrow. We'll make it right. We'll get back to doing our thing. End of the story. So Charlie and I walk back to my Escalade, right? Now do you tell Charlie about the FBI undercover? The FBI agent getting followed back? What do you do?
You have to, don't you?
I did.
Yeah.
Because if I didn't, and Louis told him this.
He probably already told him.
Now I'm getting in a car with a murdering sociopath who is thinking, let's see if he doesn't bring up the FBI girl getting followed back to the building. So the first thing I did is I went off the deep end. And I'm driving around. I knew where I was going, and I put on an act for him. I see, you know, you hear what this guy said? You know, you hear this whole story? He says, what's that? I said, the whole story about this girl getting followed. He didn't tell you that story? No, what did he say? I don't know, some story about he followed some girl back to the FBI building. And, you know, like, I brought it to him, like, what is that? I said, what, you know, how many times did you tell me? How many times did you tell me? Now I'm actually hitting my skipper, you know, Charlie. He's my kid. And I'm actually poking him like a nephew or a son would do to his dad. How many times did you tell me as I'm driving? And I'm working my way up, and I'm making like I'm getting lost. And I go, how many times did you tell me to stay away from him and stay out of this neighborhood? And God damn it, Charlie, you were right. You're always right. I should have listened to you right from the beginning. He goes, no, it's a wild story, wasn't it? Ding, 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 ding. He did know. And he goes, wow, that's a wild story you told me. I know. But don't worry about it. Listen. He had me one time plotting to kill him and a bunch of guys, and he accused me of some stuff. And you got through it just like I got through it. And there goes that bond. That bond between me and Charlie became even tighter at that moment. And he goes, just like me and you got through it just like I did. And maybe that guy's wearing a hat that don't fit his head. Okay? And to interpret that for you, that means this guy thinks he's a made guy, but we're not acknowledging him as a made guy. Right? Yep. So it was complete chaos. He goes, listen to me. And he starts whispering in the car. And he goes, there's always a time and there's always a place. Just let it lie for right now. I didn't know what was in store. I didn't know shortly thereafter you'd be introduced. Right? Yeah. But that's when I realized I can't do this on my own anymore. I have to have some sort of backstory. I have to have layers to my onion, right? When you peel back an onion, there's got to be more and more layers. If there's no layers there, you know, you're gonna get hurt.
Did you just quote Shrek?
What?
Did you just quote Shrek?
Coach Shrek?
Yeah.
He says
I'm
that?
like an onion. I got layers.
Like an onion, I got layers. Well, it's the best analogy, right? So yeah, so it was just. So at that point, I just realized I have to do things a different way. I have to go about it a different way with these guys. So I was coming out to Vegas regularly now, and I was doing my dope deals. And just to finish it up, we were buying a business out here, and we were opening up a club at the time. And, you know, I was moving up the chain with Charlie. And then I purposely showed up one day out here. And he goes...
Unannounced? You just showed up?
Unannounced. I showed up And I called him up and I said, hey, I'm in town. You want to do breakfast tomorrow?
So Charlie's living out here now.
Yeah.
So he went from Jersey, New York to here.
Remember I said his parole was transferred from Florida to, I don't know how this guy did it. He met me in Jersey when he was paroled in Florida.
And somehow he ended up getting his parole moved to Nevada.
Yeah. Yeah, he got moved to Henderson, Nevada.
So while he was here, you were kind of like working your own crew back in New Jersey and New York?
Yeah, under his direction. I called him up for breakfast. We went down to the Mandalay Bay. There was a breakfast joint near Raffles. You know Raffles.
Yeah.
So it was him and his wife, right, girlfriend, wife, and then he got real serious. And he gave her $20 to go play some gambling games. She left. And he goes, now what are you doing out here? I said, nothing. I just came out, blow a little steam off. I'm with friends, like a nephew or a son would do it, lying to his father. And I said, I just came out here. Just need a couple of days. Bullshit. And he goes, listen to me. And he literally banging on the table. And he goes, is it papaya? Is it drugs? And I go, I'm not having this conversation. I don't mean to be disrespectful to you, but you are my captain. You're my skipper. You're on paper. I'm not going to get you jammed up. I'm not having this conversation. And he demanded. He goes, I want to know what the fuck you're doing out here. And again, I made him work for it. And I go, all right, listen. Hear me out, please. Don't get mad at me. Just listen to me. I'm middling something. I got some guys, biker guys from my old days. One guy I trust in my life. You've heard me talk about him, Dutch, right? And he's, yeah. I said, well, listen, I got a guy in Hawaii. I said, he's another biker guy. And I got arrested in Hawaii years ago. And he goes, I know. For the assault? I know. The attempted murder? He already knew my criminal history. And he never said it. He goes, I know you did. And I was like, oh, but listen to me. Hear me out. The guy in Hawaii has stuff. I'm just middling and making it. And he goes, I see what you're doing. You're brokering something. You're a brokerer. I said, yeah, exactly.
A broker.
But I'm not touching anything, Skip. I'm not touching anything. Please, I swear to God, I'm not touching it. I'm just making an introduction. No, you should do that. It's good. It's good money. And he goes, so how much is our end? And that was it, right? So then shortly thereafter, it was the same breakfast. The waitress comes over, unannounced, and she turns around and she comes over with a Caesar's Bloody Mary, just the way I like them when I'm in Vegas. And she puts one down in front of me, and I go, I didn't order this. Where's this from? She goes, this is from Dutch and Mike. They're here? And I knew you guys were out here, right?
Of course.
I just didn't tell him. And this was not planned between me and you.
Right.
And it just shows how the brain is shared between us and how we worked together so well. You knew that Caesar's Bloody Mary is my thing. You sent one over because you hadn't heard from me, and you didn't even have eyesight on me. This place, Raffles, is set up where there's a wraparound area where you eat, and that's where you guys were sat down, and then we came in after you, so there's no way you could see us. So once I guess one of you must have gotten up and went.
I did. I actually saw you guys sitting there.
So you send this
But
thing
I knew
over.
that you had told me, we didn't know you were going to breakfast there. You just said you were going to breakfast.
Right.
So when I saw you, I sent you over.
So it just played perfectly into it. I was like, all right, tell him I'll be over in a little bit, jackasses. Right? And he goes, what's that? I said, nah, these guys break my horns all the time because in the morning, these guys party like that. You know, they're bikers. I mean, these guys are outlaw bikers. And I laid it right out for him. You know, you should come over and say hello, introduce. This is the only family I got, you know. And he goes, yeah, after we're done eating, finish your drink. And as we come around the corner, I look at you see me coming over with Charlie. And Charlie like stops, and it was carpet on the ground, right? Carpet.
Yeah.
And literally like left skid marks from his shoes. He stopped short so fast. So he goes, you know what? Another time. I gotta go. I got stuff to do another time. And it left me standing there. I said, Charles, it's not gonna be another time. Like, this is the only family I have. Just come over and say hello. This guy's like family to me. These guys are my brothers. And he felt compelled. And that's when he goes, all right. I'll come over and say hello. I'll come over real quick and say hello. He shuffles over to the table. You got up and stood up, and you had that long hair at the time, and it was pulled back into a long ponytail. You got up. You couldn't be more cordial with him, right? And he said hello, good morning to him, and couldn't be more of a nice guy. And he's like, yeah, nice to meet you. And we're like, yeah, let's get a drink sometime. And what was it, 30 seconds?
Yeah, not
maybe,
long at all.
So drink sometime. Sure, it sounds good. Let's do something, you know. And he scanted off, like he ran off, like just hustled out. And I said, you were upset because you're like, oh man, I think I messed that up, or I think that's bad. He left in a real hurry. I said, no, that was great. That's fantastic. I don't know what he's mad about, and then like an hour later, I was up in my room and I got a call from him. And he's like, Jesus Christ, what are you doing with them guys in the Mandalay Bay? Nice guys, Giovanni, nice guys, stand-up guys, but you can't have them in the Mandalay Bay. You got all the bulls. And bulls are law enforcement. You got all the bulls. You got Metro. You got FBI. You got the county. You got the sheriffs. You got everybody in their mother's ass watching you out here. You can't have them guys in that hotel with you, staying in the hotel at the same time. Get them out of there. Put them down on Fremont Street with all the animals down there. And that's what he thought. Yeah. He thought they don't belong on the strip. And I'm like, child, but I don't understand. And I made him, educate me. But it just made for great tapes. So that was, again, I didn't have to worry so much about the Louis thing. And then before you knew it, I went out to dinner with him another night. I had a good score. We had some things lined up, and we made some good money one month, and I went out to celebrate with him. And then he let me in on a little secret that the war in the family was starting, and it wasn't going well. And he started talking negatively about Luigi and how the administration, the bosses weren't friendly and happy about what he's doing. The whole thing about him getting made was improper, and they're not acknowledging him. And then the other half of the family is. He goes, yeah. So that's why they're just gonna kill him. No, it's better to just do away with a guy like that. The administration decides that's how it has to be, and whatever the administration decides, that's what happens. Again, just for evidence purposes and good tapes, I'm like, you know this guy your whole life. Yeah, but that's the way it is. That's how things happen. So, and I told him, you would do it. I'm going to do what? And I told him you'd kill him. You'll take care of it, whatever needs to be done. Whether it's maim him, put him in a wheelchair, cripple him, or kill him, whatever it is, you should do it. What do you think? I don't know what to say to that.
Yeah, that's gonna be a big moment for you.
I can't say yes, I can't say no. I got to go
Yeah.
back and check on my FBI supervisor and see what they say. As soon as they give me the nod, then I'll let you know. So I said, yeah. And he paused and he goes, well, be the man you were born to be. Be the man I taught you how to be. And, at that point, I wasn't really given the choice. He made it known that I was going to be doing it. So I kind of asked him, am I using the guys in the crew? Who am I going to use? Who do you want me to use? And then, he automatically thought of you guys, right? And he was like, well, you got them other guys. Would they help you? Because he didn't want me using his son. By that time, his son was reporting to me. That's how close we were. So I said, yeah, they're capable guys. They're stand-up guys. They'll never say, they'll never say anything. Trust me. Dutch I've known forever. Mikey, I'm practically, family to him. So they would never say anything. And I know they would do it. Yeah, use them. So the whole plan took a few months, to plan, and eventually he just wanted it done. It's got to get done. They're asking, why isn't it getting done? And remember, I told them there's another guy I was using who was on parole, and I was waiting for him to finish up his parole. He's going to be the shooter with me, and I had a whole backstory. And then eventually he just got so frustrated. He's like, look, if you can't do it, I'll just get on a plane and come out there and do it myself. Try to mitigate it as best we can until we can get all of our ducks in a row and the prosecution end. And because again, I was slated to be a made guy. I had a conversation with him in his house that once this was done, I was going to get my button. I was going to get upped because the ultimate plan was he was going to be made number 2 in the family. He was going to be the underboss or the street boss. And then I had a conversation with him in his house, and he explained to me he actually used nonverbal, and he was trying to tell me that he's going to get upped.
Uh-huh.
And that's what he'd do. He'd turn the TV up really loud. And then you had to play dumb. Like any other undercover would be like, what are you making me say it for? And I grabbed the remote, and I'm like, I don't understand what he's saying. And I'm turning it down. Oh, wait, like a promotion?
But of course, you do what he meant. You're trying to get him to say it for the
because I'm trying to get him to verbalize it
recordings.
for a good tape.
Yeah.
Because in court, I want to hear it,
Yeah.
I want him to solidify. And he's going, listen to me. I go this way, you go up. And I go, wait a minute. I'm getting made. I'm getting my button. And then he start yelling at you in the house. And he go, listen to me, Jesus Christ, when I get up, you go up. You understand? They're going to be standing 50 deep to pin medals on your chest over this. Do you understand that? Oh, okay. Jesus Christ, this kid don't listen. You get it now? Yeah, I get it now. Thank you. Pause tape. So Yeah. So at that point I knew, and then it was just, oh my God, if they pull the plug, you know.
Yeah.
And then from that point on, it was the end of my career. Then it was great case, right? Good case, good work. But then at the point, you know, at the end of the case, it was, well, what are we doing with this guy? He's got to be moved. He's got to be relocated. His family, his protection, safety, all that nonsense.
Well, speaking of that, like, so now you're 2 years in, and I remember when we talked here in Vegas, and you got pretty emotional. I mean, you had a whole lot of anxiety built up over the 2 years. But what about like your family? You had a family the whole time. Now you're moving back and forth. You're flying around the country. There was a little more to just ending the case and the career.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. And it, you know, you say emotional. It wasn't an emotional dump. It was the adrenaline dump. But you knew. I said to you, I vocalized to you right then and there, this is my demise. And I think I even used those words. I said, this is the end of I'm done. My career ends. I ruined everything I worked for the last 26 years. It's done. I mean, I just screwed myself, you know, by doing the best work I could possibly do. You know? Yeah. So, I knew it at that moment that it was the beginning and the end for me. So then in the transition and what I put my family through was just an absolute nightmare. These guys, everybody got arrested, as you know. They all got arrested. They all went to jail. Their first appearance in front of the judge, their preliminary appearance was just put me in a can, let me start serving my time. Once they found out it was me and they found out I was an undercover, everything they were doing in the street and everything I was doing with them in the street was all on tape, video and audio, for years. So nobody really fought the case.
And I think you're being a little unfair saying I ruined it. It was just, you took it so far that you can't go back to working in an undercover capacity anymore. You either go back to working a desk and wearing a badge and a gun and being a cop again, which once you've worked such a long-term undercover like that, you're not going to go back and do. But I mean, it's pretty amazing what you did to get that deep into it.
Yeah, I never planned. You know, I never thought that would happen. It's not like I planned it, and I'd love to say we mapped this out, but we didn't map it out. It happened organically because of the neighborhood. It goes back to the beginning of our sit down here today and everything we talked about earlier. Mm-hmm. The pizzerias, everything I did in the street came to fruition in this case.
I think that night that you and I talked, and when you said it came to an end, though, I sensed that it wasn't only your career, it was the totality of the toll on your family, the toll on yourself.
So it did take its toll on me. These guys all went to jail. I served my sentence as well. I served 9 months in my house, sitting on my back patio, you know, scooping leaves. There were no trees in my yard. I'd wait for a leaf to fall in my pool just so I could scoop it up, you know, have something to do, you know. And then they gave me the old, well, grow a beard. You know, if you need to go out in public, grow a big long, and I did. I grew my big long beard back. Yeah. But you put me in a tracksuit and I had a big long beard, you're still gonna know it's Giovanni.
Still Giovanni.
You know, so you know, that the mental part of it that way. And typically when a cop or law enforcement retires, you plan your retirement out, you know. And I had my retirement and my wife's retirement. Like, we didn't have the traditional plan, and you know, you didn't have the coup de grace. When I cut ties, it cut ties for everything. Yeah. You know, any promotions, retirements, family got promoted, and a job related to law enforcement, I couldn't go. My own brother, you know, my own brother's promotion, my own brother's retirement, my own friends' funerals, I couldn't go back for any of that stuff. So in a sense, I served my sentence as well. You know, my family did as well to this day. So it's been a roller coaster, you know. I wouldn't say, you know, and it's not I'm not crying the blues about it. I am proud of the work that I did, and this is what we signed up for, right? You and I signed up for it because you and I work operationally. My kids didn't sign up for this.
Right.
You know, my kids didn't sign up to be undercovers. My kids didn't, sign up to be law enforcement, and you know, and nor did any of the other people in my family that had to pay the price. My kids' godfathers, like I never even told them where I went. No, you know, they didn't know anything. So yeah, it's been a roller coaster. Because again, people get mad, like, hey, are you mad you didn't get made? No, that doesn't bother me at all. I would have loved to have been a made guy. You know, that's the holy grail, right? You know, for Cosa Nostra guys, for undercovers, you know, everybody wants to be the guy to say they got made. But you know, for me, definitely, I did a good job. I did my job. The Bureau did a great case, right? Took a shot, and it was a great case. Everybody across the board.
All that came to an end. I remember we were talking back and forth quite a bit, and you were definitely under a lot of stress. You're trying to figure out how to relocate your family. You're trying to figure out, really, where do you go moving forward, and have you moved forward? Have you found peace? Are you content now?
I'm trying. You know, I think the work that I do now, as far as helping others, the mental health and all the stuff like that, and the stuff that I kind of work on with law enforcement and first responders, that helps me. So, like, what do we go into this work for? To help others, right? And by helping others, we're helping ourselves, and we're trying to find that inner peace. For a long time, I was an angry elf for a long time. I was a man on an island, just pissed off at everybody because I couldn't, I committed myself to this job till I'm 65. I don't know if I would have stayed around that long, but this is what I committed my life to.
That was the plan originally.
Sure, man. Listen, from a young kid, dead or in jail by 25, or I chose to do this with my life. And when I said, it goes back to when I put my hand on that Bible and I said that oath, man, I believe that to this day. It's a weird dynamic.
Yeah.
And it's hard to rinse it off of you. And it goes back to us. You have Dutch, the police officer, and you have Dutch, the arch criminal, right? Like you have both of them in you. And, Giovanni Gatto is in me, and he still rears his ugly head from time to time when there's a jackass in the street or somebody's doing something and I need to turn it up a little bit. It still might come out in dribs and drabs, I don't do it in a violent way, but I do it in a very passive-aggressive sort of, like I watch these guys do, like I watched my old man do.
Well, your undercover persona was part of your real persona. I mean, it was all part of your own personality and part of your true character traits. You don't just let go of them.
Right. I'm grateful because the psychological part of what I was given from the Bureau and the government, that helped me a lot, right? Because all that trauma I collected along the way, I didn't know how to mitigate it until I got that training from the Bureau. And the psychological end of it, that helped me a lot, to process it.
I know there's so much more to it, but
there's a ton of it. I can go on.
You've done an amazing job. You've had a great career. You've somehow managed to hold your family together through it all. And what an opportunity to be able to hear your story. And I'm thankful that I got to sit here and interview and be part of this and help share your story with the world.
I appreciate it. It's nice to be able to finally let people in on all the work we did, right? And I look forward to telling your story, but yours is an amazing one. But I'm glad that we could finally sit here and share the things. And I say it all the time, not hide in the shadows anymore, right? Because we're so used to living in the dark shadows. It's nice to be up here with the lights and being able. It's not for our recognition. It's to let people know what guys like us are still out there, girls like us are still out there doing this job every single day. I say it all the time when I do my presentations is, look, man, there's people out here every single day risking their life like we did.
Hey, and what a great opportunity the Mob Museum has provided us both.
Oh, without a doubt.
And you. What a great partnership it's been.
Yep. And I look forward to telling it both sides. I look forward to interview. And I think that's what excites me the most about doing Inside the Life. I think looking at being able to talk to guys from the wrong side, from the dark side, and guys from the blue side, from the law enforcement side of it. Get both their perspectives. And I think we're the guys to do it because of the empathy we have, the way we were raised. It's not that we give the bad guys a free pass. It's just that very easily, on the turn of a dime, you could have been that guy. Or on a turn of a dime or a wrong choice in life, I could have been a criminal. I just chose to follow the right path, and as you did. So, but I understand, I understand why they do what they do. I don't condone it, but I understand it. So I look forward to hearing both sides of the coin.
That's Meet Giovanni on Inside the Life at the Mob Museum.
Tune in for more when we get to meet Dutch. I look forward to that.
For behind-the-scenes photos, merchandise, and exclusive content, visit InsideTheLife.org. Rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get podcasts.